Can you imagine a world without bananas, without orange juice, without chocolate? Scientists and farmers are concerned about the future of the crops grown to produce these products because they are so incredibly vulnerable to viruses and disease. In fact, there are production challenges with most crops. I hope you aren't too attached to your morning cup of specialty roast coffee. Currently, farmers are stuck using a lot of chemical pesticides to deal with these problems and to produce a good crop. However, there may be new ways to combat viruses, disease, and other agriculture pests. A powerful new tool exists that is capable of helping farmers not only combat diseases, but also make crops more efficient to grow, increase the nutritional content of our food ingredients, and reduce agriculture's impact on the environment. This new tool could have a significant effect on the sustainability of our planet. The tool is called CRISPR. You may have heard of it. You may have heard it called CRISPR-Cas or CRISPR-Cas9. It is a tool used to edit genes in plants and animals. It is a tool that will significantly complement traditional breeding efforts. At the start of the spring semester 2018, a team of 11 agriculture students at Iowa State University came together to take a look at CRISPR. They have spent the semester trying to understand CRISPR, its potential uses, and trying to answer the question, will CRISPR technology be a safe and effective tool for agriculture and for food production? Tonight they are getting together for some pasta. Let's meet the team and find out what they knew about CRISPR at the start of the project.
I had no idea what CRISPR even was. It was something that was new terminology to me.
I knew pretty much nothing about CRISPR.
I had worked in a genetics lab before, but I hadn't really studied it.
I had an agronomy class that we had a guest speaker from Pioneer, and they mentioned this new technology that they're working on.
I didn't know anything about the possible use.
I knew about the applications and possible implications of it in the agriculture industry, but none of the science.
The first thing that came to my head was the drawer in a refrigerator.
I didn't know anything about CRISPR.
I was interested right away, but with my internship, I guess I never really did follow up on what it actually was.
This new, novel, more advanced, I guess, I hate to say this, GMO technology.
I really came in not knowing anything, and I think that brought a good perspective.
That's the team. Now you're probably wanting to know more about this CRISPR thing. CRISPR. It stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats, which sounds intimidating but basically means we have a new process which lets us interact very precisely with genes, with DNA. Now before we dive into CRISPR itself, let's get some things straight. DNA is simply life's genetic software, but nature is constantly tweaking the program. All crop and animal species will naturally have their DNA alter over time. This is the driving force of evolution. Certain cave-dwelling fish, for example, evolved to cease the development of their eyes because they don't need them. They have replaced their ability to see with other senses that make them more suitable for their dark environments. Natural alterations to the fish's DNA made this change possible. Although it seems weird to us as humans, DNA alterations are happening all the time, even inside of us right now. It is completely normal. CRISPR is a tool that allows researchers to improve the efficiency of this naturally occurring process. In fact, CRISPR isn't entirely a human invention. It uses the functions of bacterial immune systems to edit or copy and paste specific portions of DNA. Imagine the sentence, "This plant is not resistant to disease." Using the CRISPR-Cas9 system, we can highlight the word "not" and remove it so the sentence reads, "This plant is resistant to disease." This is being done with the genetic sentences which spell out functions and immunities within a cell. Targeted, precise alterations of DNA is a complex scientific process that requires a great deal of research. For one thing, in order to use CRISPR, you need to know the function of targeted genes and you need to know where they are in the string of DNA. But research is paying off, and scientists are getting better and better at using CRISPR to make useful DNA changes that would take years to make using traditional plant and animal breeding approaches. So is it safe? Is it ethical? There are some concerns about the safety of altering plant and animal DNA. Alterations to DNA do have the potential of creating adverse effects and unintended consequences, but there are rules in place to make sure we don't have mad scientists but happy scientists who are using CRISPR responsibly. There's a difference between hazard and risk. Risk equals hazard plus exposure. A potential hazard of using CRISPR is the creation of so-called off-target edits. You may achieve plant resistance to one specific disease while also making it susceptible to another disease in the process. Not cool. But we can limit our exposure to the potential hazards through scientific research and some degree of regulatory oversight, allowing us to ensure that no harmful off-target effects make it to market and to also minimize any possible unintended consequences. The same way electricity in your home poses a great hazard and has the potential to do great harm, the risk is mitigated by limiting our exposure to the electrical current. Reducing the risk of you getting electrocuted wasn't just someone's good idea, but resulted from years of science, research, and a certain amount of regulation to help keep us safe. Okay, so what are some of the potential applications of CRISPR in crops? The team spoke with several impressive researchers.
We're going to continue to leverage the tools of biotechnology and CRISPR's and new biotechnology things to look at yield. We always need to improve our yield. Increasingly around the world, especially in my world of soybeans, the global market, and we are a very global market, is demanding higher and higher quality. So for soybeans, it's an oil seed, right? The number one product out of a soybean is the meal, the protein. They're demanding higher quality, better amino acid composition, better digestibility of that protein. A second product from soybeans is soybean oil. And we're working very hard to generate healthier oils and oils that have better industrial uses. We'll continue to look at things like drought resistance, heat resistance, and cold resistance. We have a climate that's changing.
What if we could make a perfectly balanced food source for human beings out of the corn kernel? Because if we could completely put a whole new genome in there, we could use those little packets of tissue to make whatever, we had enough knowledge of how the metabolism works to make anything we want. So we could have perfect amino acid balance, full suite of vitamins, eat a couple of taco shells with this and you have all the vitamins you need.
CRISPR has the potential to bring benefits to livestock as well. In the dairy industry, for example, farmers face many tough challenges caring for their animals with respect and responsibility. Dairy cattle grow horns which can cause unnecessary injuries, so farmers, rather than dealing with injured cows which are more vulnerable to infections and diseases, prefer to dehorn them. Generally, calves are put under anesthesia and veterinarians burn off the horn nodules. Naturally, happy scientists using CRISPR came up with a better solution: delete the gene responsible for growing cow horns. A team of researchers led by Dr. Allison Van Inenum at the University of California, Davis, did exactly that. They successfully allowed dairy cows to mature without the development of horns. The team is rigorously monitoring these animals to ensure there are no adverse side effects and to make sure the cows are safe around each other and safe for humans. The team talked to Allison about other areas of animal production that could be impacted by CRISPR.
Disease resistance, I think, is a big one because, obviously we lose about 20% of animal protein to disease. Animals get sick, they don't have good welfare. If they don't get sick, then they have better welfare, and we don't need to treat them with antibiotics. So I think it targets, and obviously if you don't have those losses, it's better from an environmental and economic perspective. So it's like, do we have a triple win here on the sustainability triangle? Who could be against a triple win? So that one is kind of a no-brainer to me, and it also addresses the concern around antibiotic use in agriculture.
Genis Research in Wisconsin is working with pigs. Mark Segan describes how Genis is using CRISPR to create PRRS resistance in pigs. PRRS is a severe respiratory condition that causes suffering in pigs and is devastating economically to the hog industry.
Genis is working on this gene here where it's all about virus resistance in pigs. One of these projects is called PRRS. It stands for porcine reproductive or respiratory syndrome. It's a highly infectious disease, and oftentimes when a pig herd is infected with this, they have very high mortality and morbidity as a consequence of pneumonia and diarrhea. Vaccines are not effective. They only treat the secondary infections. So if we could figure out a way to cure this disease or cure this virus disease, it would have a major positive impact on pig pork production in the US and globally. And 2 labs, one at Missouri and then one at the Rosalind Institute, identified a gene, and they can either knock this gene out or make a small mutation in it, and it confers complete resistance to the disease.
There's a common thread between sustainability and animal welfare. By eliminating the need to perform painful procedures and preventing the spread of disease, CRISPR will likely prove itself a valuable tool in the livestock industry. So CRISPR has a great potential to help address many of our crop production challenges. It has the potential to improve the nutrition in food we eat. It can help save our bananas, our chocolate, our orange juice. It can help address some of our biggest environmental problems. It can help increase the health and welfare of the livestock we raise. And CRISPR could also help save our life someday, but that's a subject for another day. However, will we allow CRISPR to move forward? Will we give scientists and entrepreneurs the so-called social license to help solve some of our most pressing challenges, some of which we may not even know about yet? What will determine whether or not we allow CRISPR and related technologies to move forward? How do we develop a trust in this technology?
So trust building is important. It's not only the right thing to do, but it's economically the thing that you have to think about as a business. Shared values was 3 to 5 times more important than just simply having the facts in trust building. So if I say that differently, if you're trying to build trust, science is 3 to 5 times less important than first establishing a connection with somebody. So we have to lead with our values first that are shared with the audiences we're connecting with.
We didn't do a good job with the first generation of biotechnology. We didn't do a good job of helping people understand what the advantages, what the positive impact on society and humans and animals and plants and everything would be. So we have an opportunity to get a lot better at communicating our science and communicating our technology and communicating our passion to make an impact that's positive on society and the environment.
How are these benefits, how we alter the plants, how would they be beneficial to the people who consume them? And that's where the consumer acceptance is going to need to have to hit. If we could lose chocolate, that would be a disaster where you could you could save chocolate with CRISPR. All of a sudden the world would be much more embracing of that. And there may have to be a scenario like that.
There are many factors that will influence us in our decisions to accept or not accept CRISPR technologies and the products of CRISPR. For one, the concept of the precautionary principle has been cited as one of the hurdles in accepting biotechnologies.
The precautionary principle doesn't make sense just in terms of living life. Like, would you have seriously got in that aeroplane if you applied the precautionary principle? The hazard is very high there.
And cars.
It's hugely high. The risk is virtually zil. You know, it's worse in cars, your risk, than it is in aeroplane, but the hazard is huge. So apply the precautionary principle to that. Apply your precautionary principle to getting out of bed in the morning. You would never get out of bed. So, you know, that's just it's an innovation blocker because you're not even allowed to consider potential benefits. And no one does anything in the absence of considering risks and benefits. If you only looked at the risks of something, aeroplane travel, you would not do it.
So some of the political memes that permeate the GMO debate, I think, would be just the same in CRISPR. And of course, it doesn't make sense because plant breeding-wise, we've been using hybrids, we've been using mutagenesis techniques, which are a much more blunt force instrument than CRISPR, of course. And those are grandfathered in, and that's fine because even organic crops can be mutagenic, but you can't change a single nucleotide. You know, that doesn't make any sense. Any logical person would say that's the opposite of what you should be doing. If you're concerned about risk, it's a bit like saying that a brain surgeon can use a blunderbuss but not a scalpel, right? You can blast away the genome with radiation and chemicals, but you can't make a single mutation which is you have the complete sequence for and you understand exactly what you're doing. So it's the opposite of logic.
It's also important to consider the source when it comes to learning about CRISPR and about science and technology in general. Alison Van Eenenum has perspective on being diligent on who and where you get your information.
Why don't you go and talk to a scientist that maybe has an opposing opinion? I've got no problem with the opposing opinion. I have a problem with the source you've chosen to get your opposing opinion from, because some dude on a couch doesn't have the same weight of evidence as the entire scientific community, and that's not a fair balance. And so I really push back against that now, especially on agriculture.
That goes back to that point about sometimes the messenger is probably even more important than exactly what the message is, because we can have all the science on our side to back it up, but if people don't trust the source that it's coming from, they're not gonna believe it. So I think that's really critical, is who is out there talking about gene editing and talking about it in a positive light.
What about regulations? Regulatory industries like the USDA, FDA, and the EPA are working toward making the right decisions for the public and the agriculture industry. While scientific evidence shows CRISPR is safe, regulators can and do have a role in helping make agriculture and our food safe. Recently, the USDA has issued a statement saying it will regulate CRISPR-derived crops no differently than crops developed through traditional plant breeding techniques. This clarification should help pave the way for a number of CRISPR-derived plant products.
If we're talking about just tweaking site-specific modification of a gene that's already in the plant, probably very little or no regulatory process to worry about.
From a scientific perspective, scientists want to have access to this tool and this technology. But if governments say we won't allow that, then even their scientific community is going to be not able to leverage this great technology, even though they see the promise and see that it is different than GMOs, for example, then they're going to miss out.
Crops developed using biotechnology started coming to market with great expectations over 20 years ago. These products provided significant value to growers battling insects and weeds in their fields, but the perceived value to consumers was limited. Due to perceived limited value, misinformation about increased pesticide use, and generally a lack of good information, some consumers, branded food companies, and environmental groups turned against the use of biotechnologies in crops. The feeling is that scientists and those who develop CRISPR products need to be better aware of the concerns and needs of consumers. Those working on gene editing and CRISPR need to be more transparent about what they are doing and why. They need to be clear on the problems they are working to help solve, and they need to better educate consumers and the public about this new technology.
Part of that too is what is the felt need that is being addressed by this technology, and what is it that consumers or the marketplace is saying is lacking, and how is this technology going to fill that gap? If the first technologies that leverage it are doing so in a way where people go, man, that is solving a real problem, and then we say, now transfer that same technology, now we're able to do this thing, maybe it's drought tolerance, maybe it's the waxy corn, something that isn't necessarily connected to consumers. If we can at least say, here's demonstrated competence of the industry to do this well and responsibly and within whatever regulatory framework is established, we can leverage that success story to say we're also going to do the same thing, follow the same protocols, make sure that we're thinking about the same, all the stakeholders involved, get that message out sooner rather than waiting to be asked about it. Then I think there's opportunity for success. I think a process of engaging multiple stakeholders, regulators, non-governmental organizations who agree 80% of the time, with what we're trying to do. We're trying to be more sustainable. We're trying to reduce animal suffering. We're trying to increase nutrition. We're trying to decrease allergenicity. We're trying to save lives from a medical perspective. If we can agree with groups that might be unlikely allies in years past about the promise that this technology represents, I think it will matter far less what we call it.
When we talk about GMOs, it has a very rough history. And so a lot of people, when you talk about GMOs, first thing they come to mind is increased pesticide use and all. So when we do some education outreach, we talk about that those aren't the main uses now, or you want to create GMOs that have increased vitamin production or is drought resistant. And that, so explaining now why are researchers still why are they making GMOs? But also now that CRISPR has lowered the hurdles of making these, it's cheaper and faster. So now you don't need huge companies with billions of dollars to make these, right? You can make them in your lab.
Agriculture and the food industry have for centuries been working to produce and deliver safe and affordable food. In recent years, there has been an emphasis on producing agricultural products in a more sustainable way, in a way that sustains our planet for future generations. So did the ISU team accomplish what they wanted this semester? Do they trust CRISPR to produce safe and useful food and agricultural products? Do they think CRISPR can and should be a useful tool?
Yes, I do. And I also trust the scientists who are working behind it. Again, I see myself as somebody who puts trust in people. I always try to look on the bright side of things, and I know what they are doing is for the good of the human population, and that's the way I'm looking at it. And so I have no doubt that the work that they are doing, the science that they are working on is overall to create a great product that can help the consumer population.
To me, it's no different than any other natural mutation that could occur, and that we're able to do things more efficiently and be able to better our environment by using more sustainable products created through CRISPR.
Speaking as a soon-to-be agronomist, I think the scientific opportunities that CRISPR provides, just because it's such a more sophisticated method of changing or manipulating, per se, the DNA of a species. There's so many more things that we can do in a much safer way.
After meeting a lot of the people that are working in the field and a lot of researchers, I have a lot of respect for what they do, and I trust their character, and I trust that they want to do what's best for the world. They're not out there just to make money.
We had a lot of meetings with scientific people, you know, I mean, with people that really know about CRISPR or gene modification, and I mean, all the scientific community agree that gene editing or gene modification operations are safe. So why should I be kind of scared about CRISPR?
I'm excited that agriculture is always evolving with new technology. It's exciting. We're so innovative compared to some other industries. And another thing that I'm really excited about that we've learned this semester is how much it can really help third world countries. Consumers will be more accepting if we are transparent with them. So if we are crystal clear about this being non-transgenic, such as GMOs, and really differentiating between GMOs and CRISPR, and how CRISPR is only using that plant species. So just overall being transparent.
The most exciting thing for me is seeing where this technology could go in the future. Hunger is a huge thing I think needs to be addressed. We just need to have a way of showing people that it is something that can actually help within the future.
The acceptance will mostly depend on the ability of CRISPR to solve some practical issue, consumers' issues. So maybe some food allergies or even human disease or something that really consumers perceive as a problem.
The wide scope of all the people that have their hands on the technology, there's at every research university in the United States, it seems like there's somebody doing work with CRISPR. And I think in the long run, driving that basic science and helping out with the research and that aspect and having everybody's hands on it instead of just a few main players is really going to help.
I think it's just being open and honest with the public and just telling them exactly what it is, and we're not trying to hide anything, and we're doing it to benefit the good of everyone, not just ourselves or farmers or agriculture. It's for the good of our society, and just really relating to the consumers and letting them know that we're humans too, and we're wanting to feed our families too, and yeah, we're in it for the good of the society.
I think the most important factor for CRISPR and bringing it to consumers is bridging the gap between the producers and the consumers and making sure they know everything about it so that they feel safe.
The objective of the CRISPR project team was not to convince people that CRISPR technology is going to solve all of our problems, and it wasn't to advocate for giving CRISPR a free pass. The objective was to learn about technologies and about those behind its development. It was to learn about its potential for doing some good in the world. It was to learn about potential risks and potential unintended consequences. It was to better understand the factors that will ultimately determine whether or not CRISPR is embraced by the consuming public. And it was to determine if it is a technology that they themselves could embrace. They didn't find all the answers. They may not have asked all the right questions. They also understand there are many perspectives when it comes to evaluating a technology such as CRISPR. They also realize when it comes to shared values, there is a lot of common ground among all of us. Most of us want safe, affordable food. Most of us want a healthy environment and a sustainable world. Most of us care about the world we leave for our kids. So who gets the final say on CRISPR? You do. It's your food. It's your future. We encourage you to do more research and to develop an opinion of your own. There are pressing issues in agriculture that will need to be addressed one way or another, and technologies like CRISPR can provide us some answers. Let's not instantly accept or discard potential solutions for a lack of knowledge, but dig deeper on tools that can leave a positive impact on the world. For this team of Iowa State students, the feeling is that science, technology, and CRISPR in particular can and should play an important role in feeding and sustaining our planet. They all like chocolate and orange juice, and they think future generations should have a chance to enjoy them as well.